Karoline Leavitt, much like her boss, has developed a remarkable talent for running away from accountability, and I mean that quite literally. When she can't lie her way out of a story or spin it beyond recognition, she simply scurries off. That is precisely what we witnessed at her press conference this morning, which came on the heels of an already humiliating start to her day on Fox News, where she openly admitted to the failures of this administration not once, but twice, the second time in the context of the war Donald Trump appears to be engineering as a distraction from the Epstein files. What makes this especially damaging is the timing. With Donald Trump set to deliver a major address tonight, Leavitt was presumably there to build momentum and lay the groundwork. Instead, she did the opposite, effectively conceding that this presidency has fallen short before a single question about Iran had even been asked. And when that question finally came, the one about Trump's looming military ambitions in the region, Karoline Leavitt did what she does best. She turned around and walked out the door.
Appointee has issued an order holding the administration in contempt for disobeying a court order in an immigration case. A federal judge finding that the federal government...
Karoline, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but perhaps a quick history lesson is in order. A year ago, in early 2025, the person sitting in the Oval Office was not Joe Biden. That chapter had already closed. So if things have gotten measurably worse over the past year, and by every meaningful metric they have, that is not a legacy problem. That is a present tense problem, and it belongs entirely to your boss. It is because of him that Americans are being illegally taxed through sweeping tariffs with no congressional authorization. It is because of him that financial markets lurch every time he rolls out of bed and fires off a new tariff announcement at 3 a.m, only to walk it back by noon and reinstate it by dinner. It is because of his leadership that this country has shed 1 million jobs, including 50,000 manufacturing positions, the very jobs he stood on stages across America and swore he would bring back. If Karoline Leavitt is troubled by the state of the nation, the conversation she needs to have is not with the press corps. It is with the man down the hall. But the economic wreckage is only part of the story. There is also the matter of the war this administration appears to be quietly assembling the justification for, a conflict that by no coincidence is gaining urgency at precisely the moment the Epstein files are demanding attention. Ro Connor put it plainly, and it explains everything, why Leavitt was asked the question she was asked, and why, when the moment came to answer it, she grabbed her notes and ran.
A federal judge in Minnesota held a DOJ prosecutor in contempt in a different immigration case. She actually ordered the prosecutor to pay a $500 daily fine until the Justice Department started complying with her orders in that case, which they finally did the next day.
Donald Trump will happily send men and women to fight and die to ensure we never have a serious conversation about the Epstein files. That is not hyperbole. That is simply the observable reality of this administration, and I think most honest people, regardless of party, can see it for what it is. Which is precisely why, just as the courts have moved to claw back the tariff powers Trump illegally seized, Congress must now act to ensure he cannot wage war wherever and whenever the political moment suits him, particularly when the war in question appears designed less to protect American security than to bury a scandal. Throughout his presidency, Trump has operated as though no such guardrails apply to him. He told the New York Times he is governed only by his own morality, a statement that is, of course, an oxymoron unto itself, and this would not even be the first time he launched an illegal strike. We all remember Operation Midnight Hammer in June of last year, the dramatic, sweeping military action that Trump and Pete Hegseth spent days, then weeks, then months insisting was a total and permanent success. Except it wasn't. By every credible account, the Iranian nuclear program was not fully destroyed. Not even close. We know this because just this past Saturday, Steve Witkoff went on Fox News and told the world, in his own words, that Iran was probably a week away from possessing industrial-grade bomb-making material. So the question answers itself. If Trump had genuinely wiped out Iran's nuclear capabilities, why is his own envoy now telling us they are on the verge of building a bomb? Why is the administration quietly reassessing and rattling sabers again? Karoline Leavitt was asked exactly that this morning. Her answer was bad. And then she left.
Chief judge in Minnesota compile a list of nearly 100 violations of court orders in immigration cases just in that state. In New Jersey, the Trump Justice Department was just forced to apologize in court for violating more than 50 orders from federal judges in immigration cases. They were essentially pleading to not be held in contempt in that state as well. Another DOJ prosecutor also had to apologize to a judge in Virginia. This time, the judge had rebuked the Justice Department for keeping relevant information from him when they sought a search warrant for the search of a home of a Washington Post reporter.
Karoline Leavitt was asked a straightforward question. You told us Operation Midnight Hammer was the most successful military strike in modern history, a total and permanent dismantling of Iran's nuclear ambitions. So what exactly are you saying now? That it didn't work? Her response was essentially nothing. A blank stare dressed up in talking points, followed by an exit. And look, I can't say for certain how the internal White House debrief went, but I suspect it involved Pete Hegseth insisting everything was fantastic, while the adults in the room quietly updated their war plans. The reversal here is staggering, and it deserves to be stated plainly. 6 months ago, this administration was telling the American people that Iran's nuclear program had been permanently neutralized, that Donald Trump's military genius had eliminated the threat entirely. Now, Steve Witkoff is on Fox News saying Iran is a week away from industrial-grade bomb-making capability. Those two things cannot both be true. And Karoline Leavitt, when asked to reconcile them, ran. The reason she ran is the same reason the administration is now beating the war drums again. This is about Epstein. It is about Netanyahu, who appears to hold considerable influence over this president, bolstered by Miriam Adelson's money and the broader architecture of pressure that has defined Trump's relationship with Israel throughout this presidency. And it is about a man who just had his tariffs stripped away by the courts, whose approval ratings are in freefall, and who is walking into a State of the Union address tonight that most observers expect to be somewhere between an embarrassment and a full cognitive unraveling. A war powers resolution nearly passed the Senate. It lost by one Republican vote, Josh Hawley. That bill deserves another run. Because if tonight goes the way most people expect it to, if Trump stands before a half-empty chamber while Democrats boycott or walk out, if the ratings disappoint and the reviews are brutal, the man who told the New York Times he governs only by his own morality will be looking for something loud and dramatic to change the subject. And we all know what that something is. Congress needs to make sure he can't find it.
He wrote, quote, "Antiseptic judicial rhetoric cannot do justice to what is happening. Across the interior of the United States, agents of the federal government, masked, anonymous, armed with military weapons, operating from unmarked vehicles, acting without warrants of any kind, are seizing persons for civil immigration violations and imprisoning them without any semblance of due process. The systematic character of this practice and its deliberate elimination of every structural feature that distinguishes constitutional authority from raw force place it beyond the reach of ordinary legal description. It is an assault on the constitutional order."
What Donald Trump is confronting right now is something historically rare. A presidency that has managed to become deeply unpopular this quickly. And he knows it. You can see it in every erratic tariff announcement, every Thram tweet, every press conference where his spokesperson bolts before the hard questions land. It is eating at him. And tonight, with the whole country watching, I suspect we are going to see exactly what that looks like in real time. That is what makes this moment genuinely unsettling. A cornered, historically unpopular president, desperate to change the narrative, with the Epstein files looming and a war he can point to waiting in the wings, that is not a combination anyone should feel comfortable about. We should be watching tonight not just for the spectacle, but for what it signals about what comes next. We will be covering all of it, every stumble, every spin, every Karoline Leavitt moment that demands to be called out for exactly what it is. Because that is the job right now. Don't let them normalize any of it. Don't let them silence you. Keep fighting.